So, yep, that's me in the corner. Shout out to Michael Stipe and R.E.M. for losing my religion. Am I looking at the camera? Am I not looking at the camera? I'm looking there. Who knows? So here I am, and I'm going to talk you and walk you through the Series 1, Episode 1 of Peaky Blinders, which you are, if you're watching this, chances are you are studying this for EDUQAS Media Studies A-Level. This will be on Component 2, TV in the Global Age. I don't know about you, but my class will be comparing this to Nordic Noir classic The Bridge. I'm going to talk to you as I guide you through a huge PowerPoint, huge collection of screenshots, basically frame by frame, virtually, of the episode. And I'm going to talk about all the things that you need to know, or I'm going to cram in as many as I can anyway, for the exam. So that means all aspects of the theoretical framework. That means, of course, you need to know about this particular episode and this programme in terms of industry, public service broadcasting, the effect on the TV industry of digital convergence and platforms such as Netflix, Prime, Apple TV, Disney Plus, etc. But also, of course, from a media language point of view, which of course means genre, it means narrative primarily. Also, from a representation point of view, looking at the way it constructs reality, constructs gender, masculinity, femininity, and also, of course, from finally an audience point of view. How is it marketed to appeal to an audience? How are audiences positioned by the text? What are its appeals for audiences? What's the fan relationship with this program? Which, of course, you can find more about on another video that I've already got in the can. Link below, or somewhere swirling around my head. So here we see the first, we begin in a cold opening, in a dramatic moment where turns out to be we are in Birmingham, 1919, just after World War, at the end of World War One, of course, which will be a key thematic element and strand within the show. There is much chaos and confusion. People are coming, but it turns out it's not people, it's person. It is, of course, Tommy Shelby, who is marching on the back of a horse into this particular suburb. A nice, ripe, fruity bit of dialogue, making us know that although this is straight away, although genre-wise we are, of course, in a period drama, we are not in Downton Abbey, where I'm not that well up on Downton Abbey, it's not really my bag, but I'm pretty sure you don't hear much lines of dialogue like this particular one. And here he comes, the man himself, Tommy Shelby, and he strides into town. Sachets, trots, let's go with trots, Campbell's, GMAMBOLS rather than BLES there. He trots into town on the back of a horse, and Stephen Knight, who is the screenwriter and essentially the showrunner for Peaky Blinders, he has said that this show, of course, it is rooted primarily in the conventions of the gangster genre. We'll talk more about them as we roll through the show. He has woven in elements of other genres. Of course, Steve Neal tells us that while mainly based in rooted in repetition, genre shows borrow and overlap with each other to make a genre hybrids. And one of the elements of hybridity here comes from the Western, the mysterious, enigmatic stranger riding into town. Although, of course, he's not a stranger. They all know full well who and what Tommy Shelby is. And he is after a girl who tells fortunes. I mean, I know you can read the subtitles, but, I'm just giving it my best Cillian Murphy here. You never know, I might get my, Oppenheimer 2. Presume that's in the works. I mean, the first one was such a success, it's got to be. Presume they'll give me a shot at that if Cillian's too busy, doing other stuff. And a nice shot, some red powder being blown up a horse's nostril. Why not? And a bit of exposition by some strategically placed urchins. There is this first narrative strand that we are introduced to here. There is a horse race, and Tommy wants this horse blessed with good fortune. This, of course, encourages the onlookers to wager the pitiful earnings on this horse, surely it would be far more useful for Tommy and his gang for the horse to lose. Bit of an enigma there. We will come back to that one, of course. And more on the horse, mon ampo. And here we are on set then, the tourist houses, the setting, very much kind of urban, poverty, ripe with poverty, as we will see when the inspector kind of rolls through and observes the moral degradation that existed in Birmingham at that time. Sure, it's not like that now. I'm sure Birmingham's cleaned up its act, loads since 1919. I've never really been to Birmingham, and I'm not really inclined to go either. And Tommy, of course, getting respect wherever he goes in the neighbourhood. Calls in at home to find one of the younger Shelby offspring enjoying a crafty snout at the fireside. And this kid, of course, could be the one who later will be, moving on. Gateway drug of smoking a tab is, of course, to start messing with firearms, which is what he does. I think we're hinted at later in the show. We move, and again, settings, conventions of the genre into a back room of the Shelby abode, which is the HQ of the gambling and underworld operations. And they are all gearing up for this big horse race, of course, where presumably the Shelbys will clean up. They've encouraged everybody to win and to bet on this horse, and clearly it's going to lose. Or is it? And there is our next member, John Shelby, played by Joe Cole, not the former West Ham/Chelsea player, a different Joe Cole, just in case you were wondering. And here is Tommy's big brother, Arthur. Classic convention of the genre, the binary opposition at the head of the gang, of course, fire and water. This is something we've seen, the hot-headed gang leader versus the cold, calculating gang leader. We see it in a programme like Top Boy with Deshane and Sully. We see it in the gangster classic The Wire with Avon Barksdale and Stringer Bell. We see it in Manchester favourites Liam and Noel Gallagher. One of them cold, calculating and cerebral, not Liam, and the other one who is hot-headed and impulsive. So Arthur and Tommy really do align with this convention, and here he is ordering little bro about. But of course, we know who really calls the shots and calls the shotguns in this particular series. And even though the family work together, work democratically, Tommy, of course, is kind of pretty much pulling strings solo, doing things himself. And Arthur has got wind. Maybe the powder travelled across to Small Heath, got wind of what his little brother is up to. A classic line of dialogue gives us a really excellent insight into representation of masculinity, the thoughtful, cerebral brother. Again, that representation links also into narrative, the use of binary opposites, of course, links also into genre. You can see how all these aspects of the show kind of overlap and interlace with each other. I think, Arthur, that's what I do. I think so that you don't have to. You can imagine Noel saying that to little brother Liam just as they, got ready to work out how they were going to rip fans off with tickets for the reunion shows. And cross-cut to our first sighting of the inspector, who is on the case of some stolen rifles and, of course, will be looking to bring to an end the reign of terror and crime of the Peaky Blinders in Birmingham. And again, genre-wise, classic binary opposition. Our protagonist, but of course, the police who are determined to root out corruption and put an end to their operations. Bit of exposition as well. He leaves through their files, and there is Sam Neill as Inspector Campbell. And in doing so, of course, he introduces us to the characters, their names, and a little bit of backstory. Hence, we know that Arthur Shelby, gangster, racketeer, etc., leader of the Peaky Blinders, Thomas Shelby, who we can see, and this is referred to a few times, honoured with the King's Medal for Gallantry in the war, adding another little note of depth to Tommy's character. That's going to be really vital to representation. That's going to be really vital to audience alignment. And it's going to tell us something again about TV in the golden age, where audiences expected the central protagonists who were really complex and dark and troubled. And that's been the case ever since Tony Soprano first opened the door of his therapist's office, and we met a mob boss who needed his mind fixing, so to speak. And cut to another character then, the firebrand union leader who, and here he is, Freddie Thorne, going to be another character giving us conflict, friction with Tommy and the rest of the Peaky Blinders. He is a communist agitator, which also is, that's my Twitter bio as well, funnily enough. And we enter another setting. So here, low angle, just to augment and amplify the sense of power and menace that Tommy exudes. Here he strides into the local pub, the local drinking hall, which of course everything's on the house. Essentially, this is their little personal domain. And again, it's a genre convention, part of the setting, the place that the gang establish themselves and kind of operate a base, or operations base, if you like. Tony Soprano had the bada bing, and here we have this boozer on the house. Of course, Tommy wouldn't pay for his own drinks. Here comes Freddie to steal a bit of money and to, again, a bit of friction building between the two. Gossip, rife with gossip, this particular area of Birmingham. And they know, Freddie knows that the police are onto them, that they are on this list that we have just seen Campbell leafing through on his train on the way to Brum, I presume it was still Birmingham New Street at the time. I think it has changed since then, but it took a while for that to happen. And here, another interesting little moment. I really wish I'd let you take that bullet in France, says Fred. Out of nowhere, in comes Danny Whizbang, introducing another character, introducing another thematic element. Danny, essentially another victim. He came away, he emerged alive from World War One, but clearly not unscathed, with profound shell shock, PTSD, and he's not in a good way. He's not in a good place, and I don't just mean Birmingham. He's generally not in a good place. Tommy, he is, ultra violent when he needs to be, of course, but he can be kind, he can be caring, he can be compassionate. It's all about that sense of complexity that his character is portrayed and constructed with. Get that smoke and mud out of your head. The mud, of course, symbolising the battlefield and all the struggle and horror that went with it. Of course, Freddie knows Tommy runs this gaff now, but that's part of the, again, convention of the gang genre, that they run operations in the local area. But of course, there will be rival gang, there will be threats to their power, there will be those people, even on their turf, that try to sabotage and undermine their control. And a little bit of foreshadowing going on, I would say here, as Freddie speculates on what Tommy could do to him from here. I have to put a buddy in my head sometimes. So here comes, he's off the train now. It took a while for him to trundle up from London, but here he is. And now, interesting introduction of another character, and this is Aunt Polly, the feisty matriarch of the Peaky Blinders, the Shelby clan. And what an introduction. Now, in terms of representation and femininity, we have three really impressive characters to get our teeth into. And what a line of dialogue. I mean, you should be quoting this one, maybe just in your normal way of business, but also in your essays. Get up off your arse, you mumping pig. If you can't make something how that subverts and defies conventions and stereotypes of gender, then what are you doing watching this video and doing media studies? Come on, they're giving you something to play with there. And John, it turns out, is a bit of a drunk, therefore one who could be leaned on easily, perhaps in future episodes, just dropping us these little bits of character information that we know will be buried and will come back throughout the rest of the series. Again, part of the period drama. It touches on the politics of the day, the communists, the IRA, the Fenians, a whole range of different political concerns. Gives another an audience another reason to be interested, another reason to watch, be intrigued, be entertained by this show. Tommy, of course, always ahead of the game in relation to the rest of the family. A rather pointed cutaway to little sister Ada here, who we were about to discover is in a illicit relationship with Freddie Thorne, communist agitator, Union firebrand, of course, very much against the wishes, would be against the wishes of the family, were it known, but another, a narrative strand that is very much in keeping with the genre conventions, of course. We're Peaky Blinders, we're not scared of coppers. Imagine that, but in a Birmingham accent, and you'd get something of what goes down here. This family does everything open, says Polly. Again, a little bit of irony. We know that Tommy is very much a closed book, a sealed vault, and he is operating pretty much independent of his brother Arthur, mainly because he knows that Arthur is a complete and utter liability. And another great line for our representation of gender, but also part of the historical context, as you know from your study of Tide, perhaps, or Kiss of the Vampire, that during the First World War, the women were who runs the world, girls. That's what our other, one of our other component ones subjects told us, of course, and Aunt Polly definitely, she ran this world while the boys were all in the mud over there at war. This whole bloody enterprise was women's business. So a great line of dialogue there. And R.I.P. Benjamin Zephaniah as the fire and brimstone preacher, wandering through the smoke-filled, morally degraded streets of Birmingham. And we see people, very animalistic behaviour, people rotting in the street, and all sorts. Cut to church very appropriately. And another great line from Aunt Polly. God and Aunt Polly are listening as she has this private audience with Tommy to find out what's going on with this robbery. She knows that he's involved. And he gives us the truth. This is the narrative strand that really is going to dominate, a one-off. We expect in TV in the golden age, audiences have grown used to these long, sprawling series with multiple narrative strands. So this is just one. The missing munitions, just one narrative strand in this particular episode. And we get this little flashback to tell us how the men stumbled across these particular guns. There is the threat looming of the death penalty, of course. We still have that at this point in history. Cut to a romantic liaison between Ada and Freddie in the shadows of a bridge, and there is a little. We're positioned, I would say, not particularly like Freddie Thorne, not for his communist agitating, more for a kind of he kind of exudes a sense of hostility, a little bit of chippiness, and a bit of a grudge against Tommy Shelby. He does have a bit of a look of Alex Turner from the Arctic Monkeys, but he's also a little bit too sarky and a little bit caustic in his dealings with Ada, who he refers to as the only princess of the royal family of the kingdom of Smallheath. Smallheath being the suburb of Birmingham that the Shelby family call home. And another really interesting representation of femininity, this time one who appears in many ways to conform to stereotype, but again, subverting expectations and giving us a representation that is quite challenging when we fully grasp what Grace, for it is she, will come to represent. She's here about a job as a barmaid, She is not a whore, as Tommy establishes later. Back to Campbell, so we're cutting across these various scenes. Campbell recruiting and instructing new arrivals from Ireland. They've drafted in, rounded up people to act as serve as auxiliary support for the police in Birmingham to clean up this mess. And again, he's more of a preacher almost than a police officer with the rhetoric that he piles on here about the state of the rot, the ruin of, and the public rotting of Birmingham at this point. All, of course, attributed to those pesky Peaky blinders. So more men have been recruited. Cut to the cinema where Arthur is about to try and avail himself of some of the perks of being the boss of the Peaky blinders. One perk being you can jump the queue at the local cinema, and the second perk I'm not going to go into. You can watch the show yourself to see what he expects from those two women. But the police come, and being Arthur effing Shelby, he's not going to cut it when Inspector Campbell is around. He is dragged to an interrogation room where he is given quite the robust questioning. Is the lead pack dog of the Peaky blinders. Our first interaction of Grace and Tommy Shelby soon follows. He's off to get some some medicinal rum, to help clean up and soothe the pain of his beaten down older brother. And Grace, ordered, of course, instructed Tommy does not pay for his drinks. We don't help coppers. Again, I'm not really. We don't help coppers. Yeah, Birmingham's not really my not really my thing accent wise. We said we'll have a family. I don't know what accent I'm doing there. I'm just gonna have to. I'll go away and practice the Birmingham accent and maybe get back to you. For now, I'm not even going to bother. I'm not even going to attempt. Said we'll have a family meeting and take a vote. Getting the bit Jasper Carrot maybe. Comedian from the 70s and 80s, ask your grandparents. And of course, Arthur, it looks like, wants to collaborate, wants to collude with the police. They're all on the same side, aren't they? Timmy, it'd be funny if it was Timmy Shelby. Tommy is a little bit more sceptical, not really convinced that collaborating with the coppers is the thing for the Shelbys and for the Peaky blinders. She's having a good sing-song now. She's Irish. She's a songbird. It's what she does. And again, there's been no trouble, no singing in the pub for a while, says Harry. And of course, Tommy, who is carrying with him the chaos in his head of the conflict of the war, reminding him why people haven't been much in the mood for singing. Cut to Ada and Freddie, of course, and again another of our ripe, fruity bits of dialogue. We're not in Downton Abbey anymore, Toto. The second your balls are empty, it's back onto politics. These are strong, forthright, coarse in some ways, but they just tell it like it is. They are not to be trampled on. These are not women who are being used. They know what their partners are about. And of course, that threat lingering, a little fuse lit to explode in a future episode. And now, interesting, a little bit mysterious and enigmatic. So here's Tommy cooking up what looks to be some kind of drug, an opiate to soothe his kind of frazzled psyche as he tries to sleep. And we cut between present and flashbacks of the past and of the trauma and the trouble that still lives in Tommy's head. And from there, oh dear, Danny, another troubled soul from the victim of the war, and now another collateral damage from the war, as in his sort of frazzled state of mind, he of course turns a knife on an Italian restaurateur while his brothers watch. Cut to again, the period drama, really intriguing that we get Winston, a young Winston Churchill, being represented prior to him being Prime Minister, of course. I think he was Secretary of State at this point, and it shows how the programme is, of course, rooted in reality. The Peaky Blinders were a real gang. There'll be plenty of documentaries that follow up and piggyback on the back of the show to feed that interest in the real Peaky Blinders. And of course, Winston Churchill, very much a real figure. That goes without saying. And it's another layer of intrigue and interest for the potential audience. And even Winston Churchill is not above a threat like this. If there are holes to be buried, dig holes and dig them deep. Apologies if you can currently hear my dog barking. That was not a scheduled bark. Tommy, of course, he was going to get rid of the guns. He'd been warned by Aunt Polly. He knows the repercussions, the potential repercussions, i.e. the rope and hanging if he is caught with them. But Tommy knows better. He has, as he says, an alternative strategy, tells, I think it's his uncle, he's some sort of family associate, what to do with them. And here we get our first utterance of the classic, the killer line by order of the Peaky Blinders. And now we discover that Barmaid Grace is not as she seemed, not just a wonderful songlark, but an undercover agent working for Campbell with her own historic grievance and grudge against any criminality and wrongdoing. As we learn, her father was killed by the IRA. And we're getting towards the end of the episode, and poor old Danny, for his murder, again, Freddie Thorne told us that Tommy is the law around here. And essentially here he has taken the law into his own hands. He is dispensing justice on behalf of the murder victims, the stabbing victims' family, his brothers, again, another gang, a rival turf. They've got to keep the peace and all of that. And he's going to do the shooting and do the killing. I would dispatch you myself. Honour, integrity, representation of masculinity. The complexity conforms in so many ways, but doesn't in others. Poor old Danny, you look out for those of my boys. Getting there with the Birmingham accent, working on this thing. It's a work in progress, however. And he's gone. He's done the job. But of course, he hasn't, because Tommy is Mr. Compassion, but compassion with an edge. He's got another use for Danny. Rather than to float off as a corpse, he can use him to his advantage. And we cut now back. Remember where we started? We started in what they referred to as the garrison, where the horse trick was done, and we learned that Tommy, once again, was playing the long game, the shrewd game, the game that is hidden from the view of someone like his brother, Arthur. The horse won, and it will go on winning a couple more times until the investment, the money that is wagered and staked on it is so big. That is when the Shelbys will make this horse lose and hit the jackpot. Always thinking. It's no wonder that Tommy, of course, has got an appeal online, very much a strong appeal to a certain kind of young male. Again, more on that in my other video. Poor old Danny, you're a Peaky Blinder now. We're almost at the end of the show, but we have to finish with Tommy. He's our main man, so it would only be right that the narrative finishes with him. And Aunt Polly just wants to make sure he did as he told her he would do with those guns. Of course, everything's open in this family, and he did the right thing. Very pointed words, ambiguous words, and Aunt Polly, of course, is right to be suspicious of exactly what Tommy means by this. And off he goes into the distance in a nice nice little shot we have of Cillian Murphy here. So, Peaky Blinders, Series 1, Episode 1, conforms to so many elements of the gangster genre, gives us some really interesting representations of masculinity, particularly in Tommy, and his binary opposite, Arthur. So many interesting representations of femininity, that complexity that is a key part of that TV in the golden age, long-form series like Sopranos, Mad Men, The Wire, Breaking Bad, etc. And this was the BBC's attempt to have a show like that of its own, to prove that public service broadcasting can take the creative risks necessary to make a show that, based on repetition, but that he borrows from and overlaps with other genres to make something original and distinctive and justify its use of the fact it gets the license fee, of course, a show that it would be able to go on and sell around the world, sell to Netflix, so it has this streaming afterlife, an afterlife that will very soon culminate in a film version of, or a film spin-off continuation of the Peaky Blinders. The Peaky Blinders brand, of course, started here, but became a very, very successful, established brand in its own right. Bars, the look, the hair, everything. Tattoos. I won't get mine out right now, but yeah, by order of the Peaky Blinders across my back. So I hope that that's given you a few ideas, reminders of the kind of thing to think about as you are studying Peaky Blinders for your media studies. Okay, I'm off now to work on my Birmingham accent. I'll be back in a few months. Bye bye.